Well, hello, Stacey Murphy here, known to many as Brooklyn's Backyard Farmer. Here's what I would love for you. I would love an overflowing table of vegetables and herbs, each and every work fresh from your garden. And it's not enough to grow those vegetables. I would really love for you to enjoy and savor the nourishment of all of that garden harvest, each and every morsel. Now, let's get real. There comes a time in every gardener's life when the zucchini or summer squash starts growing in and it just doesn't stop. Before you know it, you have giant zucchinis growing out of your ears. And this is why cooking and preserving food from the garden is different than going to the grocery store or farmer's market. Sometimes you end up with a ton of one crop and you're looking for creative solutions to ensure that none of it goes to waste. So I'm going to show you how to get really creative when you have a lot of zucchini or summer squash that comes in all at once. First, a couple things about harvesting summer squash and zucchini. You know, they don't get this big overnight. It takes a couple days. So there are some varieties that grow in more quickly than others, but one thing that all the varieties share in common is that the smaller the zucchini, the more tender it typically is. So I would recommend ideally checking in on your zucchini and squash plants at least twice a week just to check them, but once a week is going to ensure that they don't get super huge. And that's okay. If one gets away from you and you have a giant harvest, I'm going to give you some options in this video that go beyond zucchini bread, because that's not my favorite version of harvesting and eating my zucchini. I prefer recipes that really focus on the vegetable. Now, I've taught hundreds of teens in Brooklyn how to cook fresh from the farm. And one thing that amazed them is that once the season started, we had so much fresh food each week to decide how it would get cooked or stored for later. Now, if you spend most of your time around the house during the week, then you can probably cook whenever you like. But I know for most people, you're juggling lots of different activities each day, and you don't want cooking to take over your entire life because there's other priorities as well. So wouldn't it be nice to have a system where you did most of your prep work one day of the week, and then you had available to you multiple meals and snacks throughout the week? Especially if you harvested a bunch of zucchini or summer squash and you know that next week more is coming. Now, I have a food preservation and storage system that goes along with my crop plan because you have to be ready to either eat or store all that food that's coming out of the garden. And in the next video in the series, I'm going to share more about that system so you can put it to work for you. But let's say for now, you just harvested armloads of zucchini and summer squash. What do? So here's what you're going to do with all that zucchini. Go ahead and download the zucchini recipes below this video so we can get started. You're going to take the most tender, small zucchinis, save them for night when you want to stir fry, saute, or roast them, and just enjoy the simple flavor of zucchini. So set aside one serving for that in your fridge, keep it cool, and pick a night to cook that up with your dinner. Next, you're going to identify any large zucchinis that may not be the most tender, and you're going to either roast them for a squash dip or shred them for zucchini fritters. Then, any medium-sized zucchini, you're going to chop them up and make some quick pickles. And if you just have medium-sized zucchini and lots of them, you could divide those zucchini or summer squash into thirds to create a little bit of each of these recipes. So why this strategy? Well, all of this you can prep in just a couple hours and get ready for meals and snacks throughout the week. And I do this on Sundays so that I don't have to think about food all week. It frees up so much brain space to focus on all the other priorities in my life, knowing that I have delicious and nourishing food waiting for me whenever I'm hungry. The zucchini fritters you can prep and freeze and have for breakfast all week in just a couple minutes. And the fritters aren't just for breakfast. They're delicious any meal of the day, and kids love them. The squash spread will store for a week in the fridge, and you can pull it out for a quick snack or as part of lunch, and you could always freeze it and save some for later as well. And then the quick pickles will store for up to 1 month, and you can give as gifts too if you're going to a party. If you have an event or a potluck coming up that week, you can create a larger batch of the spread because it is a crowd pleaser. Now, each time you learn a new recipe, it takes a little longer to read through the recipe, completely understand it, prepare it, test it to see if you like it. But once you do all that, you can prep a lot of vegetables all in just a couple hours and have the rest of your week to enjoy all of that food. And the cool thing is that because the recipes are so different, you don't get sick of the vegetable that's the main ingredient. You don't get sick of the zucchini or the summer squash. And if you do all this preparation at once, it's easier to get your family or friends involved in the process, so it might go even more quickly. All right, so don't forget to download the zucchini recipes below this video and follow along. I know you can create those fritter and spread recipes on your own, so I won't talk you through those, but here's what I want you to think about as you create all these recipes. One single recipe can be prepared multiple ways depending on the flavors you love or what you have on hand. And you'll see what I mean as I talk you through this quick pickling. Creating multiple spice blends also helps to ensure that even though you're eating the same vegetable over and over, it seems new and fresh each and every time, and you don't get sick of it. So let's talk about quick pickling. And the big advantage here, we already mentioned, is that quick pickles they're quick by name, they're easy, they store up to a month in the fridge. Okay, so let's head to the kitchen and get started.
So here's what's cool about a medium-sized zucchini or summer squash. This happens to be a zucchini. Is that this is about half a pound. So when you go to the store and you're trying to figure out how much 2 pounds of zucchini is, it's basically 4 of these. The other cool thing about a medium-sized zucchini, check this out. If you're going to pickle in jars, let's say, and you don't have to pickle in jars, but I like to pickle in jars because they stack really nicely in the refrigerator. You could pickle in bowls if you'd like to. But what's cool about a medium-sized zucchini is that when you cut it in half, basically what you get, if you want to cut the zucchini so that it's in little slivers, you could basically stack this in the jar and really pack in the zucchini. So here I have these little strips, right? And what's cool about these is that when they're all separated, when they go in the jar, they basically can pack the jar very full, right? If we have all of them in there like that, right? So there is one idea on how to cut them into narrow strips. Another idea how to cut them if you want to go for long and narrow is more like a pickle, right? So what do pickles normally look like? So in that case, you want to go for something more along the lines of, let's say, thicker. And these will taste more like zucchini than, say, the really narrow ones because it'll take a little bit longer for these to pickle wholly. So that's what I would do if I wanted that style. So I'm just going to stick them in here with the other ones because there's nothing that says that you can't pickle them all together in the same jar, even though they are cut differently. So you can enjoy them no matter what. So there you go. Look at that. One medium size zucchini is about a jar. Now you could probably fit some more in here. And I would recommend, you're going to put something else in here like some herbs or some onions or some flavoring. And then of course all your special pinches of herbs and spices as well. Now, of course, you can cut your zucchini any way you like for these quick pickles. And another way that you can slice them is this direction as well to make little rounds. And of course, that's going to be something that you could put on top of almost anything, on top of tacos, let's say. That would be very delicious. You could even dice up your zucchinis if you wanted something that was more finely ground that might go on top of things like tacos. So it's up to you how you choose to cut them. I recommend if there are slivers that they are fairly narrow. In that way, they become really soft and you can use them for a lot of different things. All right, so here this is all packed in really nicely. Those rounds, they fill the jar nicely, so that's a medium-sized zucchini with a little half of a small spring onion that I got out of my garden. And so basically, once I fill this with fluid and jiggle it a little bit, it's going to pack down really nicely. So that's about how much for this particular size jar that you want. And then later, when I put in the fluid, I'm also going to put in all my spices as well. All right, so for these spears, what I could do is I could just stick all of these radishes that I want to put, I could just stick them anywhere in here, and also the garlic clove. But what I think I want to do is make it a little bit pretty, and so you can be creative with this. What I also know is that I'm probably going to eat the spears separately than when I eat the radishes, because I'll probably put the radishes on some tacos, and I'll probably eat the spears just, as a snack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip it over. I'm going to actually pull out all those spears that I so lovingly packed in there. I'm going to actually just dump my radishes right on the bottom because they're going to be purple and a little bit pretty. And I'm going to put this the garlic on the bottom too. So now I have a little bit of color on the bottom. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to pack those spears back on. And one way to do that is to have the jar on its side so that you can easily slide them in this way. So you can do it all at once. And you can kind of jiggle it down and make sure that those pieces are all packed in nice and tightly, right? So now I have my jars, I have a little bit of color at the bottom, and I have those spears on top. So you can get really creative. You can, if you have a really large jar, you can stack different pieces and make it really beautiful so that when you see it, it's something that inspires you to keep going. Okay, now that I have my jars packed the way I want them packed, and I have some of them sliced, circular and some of them as spears. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the spices in order to make each one of these a little bit different. So starting on this end, this is the one that I put some onion in. And so what I have for this jar is I'm going to add some dried dandelion, which is medicinal and also a little bit bitter from the garden. I have some cardamom, which is kind of like a sweet flavor. And then I've got some ground turmeric and some ground ginger, which are also medicinal and a little bit spicy. So this one's going to be a little bit sweet, a little bitter, and a little bit spicy. This one in the center, what I want for this one is I want it to be a little bit purple and sweet. And so this one is in circles. This is a crowd pleaser with kids, but you can make them purple, right? And so this one's going to have dried hibiscus and dried elderberry flowers, or dried elderberries. And so both of these are also medicinal as well. Lots of vitamin C in this one. Okay, and then you have your spears at this end, and this is going to be your very typical one. And I'm going to put in my dill, and I'm going to put in all my typical spices: celery seed, mustard seed, some turmeric, some crushed pepper for those of you who like things a little bit spicy, some allspice, and then I like to put in coriander seeds. But if you don't like cilantro, you might want to leave them out. You might want to taste them before you put them in. I find they give a nice lemony zest, and then a bay leaf. So with this dill, I like to just pack it in there. So whichever way you can send it in, I just want to make it a little bit beautiful. So I'm just going to kind of pack it in there. And you could, in theory, you could put that in before you put in the zucchini as a way to make it a little bit easier on yourself. I'm going to pack this little guy into this side. And I just like that because then you can actually see the dill on the side. I think that looks kind of cool. And you can trim off these top edges, or once the fluid goes in, you can kind of press them down. All right, so now that that's in, I'm going to get my bay leaf in there. I'm going to stick that in the side, and it's okay if it breaks up. And then I'm going to grab these other spices very carefully, and send them in. And this is a lot easier if you're not trying to pick it up off of a cutting board like I am, if you just are putting it directly into the jar. All right. And all these little mustard seeds are trying to get away, so I'm picking all of them up and getting them in there. Okay. All right, so there you have it. We have our 3 jars, our 3 different styles, and this is going to be exciting to see what they taste like. All right, now it's time to make the brine that brings everything together. And this is where your preferences really come in. So not only the different spices in the jars, that's where your creativity is and where you bring flavor to your quick pickles, but in the brine, you get to decide how tart it is or how sweet it is. And I'm personally very sugar-free, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try these without any sugar at all to see how they go, and I want to see how much sweetness that hibiscus and elderberry bring to that one version. But I'll show you a couple of ideas for the brine. So what I use is I use 1 cup of apple cider vinegar and 1 cup water, which is what's in here. So I'm going to pour that in. Okay, so that's the big thing, right? And the next thing I'm going to put in is 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm using sea salt, and some people use kosher salt. Just don't use iodized salt. So I'm going to put that in. And this is the time where some people choose to put some sort of sweetener in. So you could put some sort of refined sugar in, or you could put in a little bit of honey too. It would be another way to sweeten it without using cane sugar. You could try coconut sugar. So some people use 1 cup of sugar per 1 cup of vinegar. I think that's a little crazy, but that's just me. So you have to decide what's right for you. Some people put in as small as 1 tablespoon full of sugar for this much vinegar. So you can test it. I would suggest starting at the low end and then ramping your way up with the sugar, because it's hard to take the sugar out, but you can always put more in. Okay, so I'm going to turn this on high, and I'm going to bring this to a boil so that we can pour it over our solutions. And so with quick pickles, I'm making these in these jars, and what's nice about those jars is they can withstand boiling water, and they can withstand freezing cold temperatures. So I can basically just pour this right into those jars and then let them cool. You could do this in any kind of container that could deal with the heat. So you could put this in a glass bowl and just put all your ingredients into this, like a big glass bowl, pour the brine on top, and then just stick it in the refrigerator. So if you were making one giant batch, I like to make multiple little batches and try things out and try different creative recipes. And I always mark down what's in each jar and do a taste test and try to have as many people as I can taste it so that I can see which ones are people's favorites.
Okay, so my brine has come to a full boil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my jars and I'm going to very carefully pour the brine over the vegetables that are in the can and making sure not to splash it outside of the jar and pouring it over the top of those herbs that are at the top too. And then every once in a while, gently shaking the jar, making sure that any bubbles come out of the jar so that you can continue to pour more liquid in until the jar is full. And I'm going to do this for each one of the jars. To help you get the right amount of brine for each one of these jars, essentially what you're looking for is about 1 cup of brine per one of these jars. And so we originally made 2 cups total. We're going to need 3 cups so we can fill all 3 of these cups here. And once we fill these, notice that the colors are starting to form. So the turmeric is starting to turn things yellow, the radish is starting to turn things red, the elderberries and the hibiscus is starting to turn things purple. And what I'm going to do is that if any one of the jars has some of the herbs that are all stuck in one location, I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to stick it in and I'm going to gently wiggle it around and make sure that all those herbs are stirred in so that every bite is just as delicious as every other bite. Okay, so now that everything is mixed in and they're looking good, what we're going to do is we're going to get them cooled off. So we're going to take these and we're going to cover them and we're going to put them in the refrigerator. They will be ready within 20 minutes. You could eat them. But in terms of all those flavors that we put in, you're really not going to taste them at least for another day or even maybe 2 days. And that's what I would recommend, is making these just a little bit ahead of time. One of the cool things about having quick pickles always around is that when you make these jars where they're cut and they have different colors, right, and you can see the different pieces in them, they make really beautiful gifts. And so if you just are making quick pickles each week or every 2 weeks, then you always have something around to take to a party with you. Just put a lid on or, package it up as a present as well. And, the colors, I think you can get really creative here. So take a look, this purple really starting to form. So let's see if you can see this in the sunlight. So this is something that I find that little kids get excited about when they see purple liquid and they're like, hey, what's in there? Can I try that? And it's just packed with vitamin C, right? Now keep in mind when you're doing these quick pickles that you have tons of herbs in your garden that you could be using in these jars to make these delicious. So in one of the jars we use some dill, which is a very typical kind of thing to use in terms of a pickle. But you could also use things like rosemary, sage, thyme, oregano, and even, here's a crazy thing, but it actually is good, minty pickles. So when I was cooking with teens, they were trying everything on the farm, creating all these different quick pickle recipes. We were doing taste tests, and you know what did best in blind taste tests? Mint. So you can do mint. It just doesn't hold up very well. The way that rosemary and sage and thyme, these are things that withstand the pickling. They look good in the jar for a time to come, and they taste good. The minty, it starts to get a little bit too minty, and the leaves don't look so great. So you might want to try it if you're eating them all at once, but if you're storing them, and these will store for a good 2 weeks in the fridge, so if you're storing them, you might not want to try those minty pickles, but I recommend you really experiment and try all the things that are coming out of your garden. See what things taste like when they're dried and then put in, right? Things like the dandelion leaves that we put in. You could also use dandelion root if that's available to you, dry it and put that into a quick pickle as well. So it's really up to you, right, to discover the types of flavors that really excite you and really nourish you. If you were to take away just one thing from this video, what I hope it would be is that there is endless ways to enjoy summer squash and zucchini here on the Zucchini channel. And I get it, we all get stuck in our own ruts. It's human nature. We tend to find something that works for us and we continue to do that same thing until it no longer works. And that's why there are all of these online resources for recipes, right? So what I would love for you instead is for you to have a system in place that could foster your own creativity to turn all your garden freshness into your own recipes. So instead of finding it stressful to figure out what to do with all that zucchini, you're excited about all the delicious food you're going to make. So in the next video, I'm going to share with you my food preservation and storage system that allows you to take full advantage of everything in your garden without wasting anything, while also creating new and exciting flavors for you and your loved ones. Please post your comments below. I'd love to know what sparked your creativity in this video. Is there going to be something new that you try with zucchini or summer squash? Maybe some new flavors that you're going to put together, maybe a new twist on an old recipe. So post your comments below and don't forget to give me the thumbs up if you like this video. All right, so let's taste these quick pickles and see how we did. All right, check them out. Oh, yeah, delicious.